Shall I call you our old pal? You've been on this program so many times. Jamie Court, he is with Consumer Watchdog, consumerwatchdog.org, and you're usually banging your fist because of something that's going wrong in the world we live in, and I think you have a lot of company with people who are banging their fist about gas prices.
Yeah, I mean, we're up at $4.20, $4.30 in LA County, and crude oil costs are half of what they were last time we were here, so there's no good reason for it. And I think, you know, talked about gas prices, realizes something's wrong. What we're seeing, though, is an unbelievable, not only record pump prices compared to the rest of the nation, we're $1.20 above the rest of the nation, but unbelievable returns for the oil refiners. They're keeping us running on these really low inventories, and we just got some new data back up on the State California Energy Commission website. Hasn't been there for 6 months, literally just got back right now, and it shows that of what we're paying at the pump, $1.17 is going home with the oil refiners, and that's a historic record. I
wonder if that's one of the graphics that you sent over to us earlier today.
I couldn't send it over.
Okay. But, so we're going to get to that. But one of the issues we do have some video. One of the issues is ships coming into port here loaded with gasoline. We've got video of them taking off.
Yeah, it's really outrageous. The reason we're paying so much now, according to the oil refiners, is low inventories. So they stopped all the imports, and what we have found is 7 ships, we're charting them right now, going from California with a lot of fuel down to South America, to Chile, to Mexico. They're coming out of California refineries. So we have a ship, for instance, we're tracking, I think this might be the Nordic Imagination. A couple of days ago, this was up in the Bay Area at a ConocoPhillips refinery loading up. It's got 13 million gallons of capacity. And with the other ships, if you loaded them up with all the refined supply you could, it would be 2 days of our gas supply in California going to South America. And that's really significant because the oil refiners are saying, we don't have enough refining capacity. We don't have enough inventories. We have refineries now, and that's why your prices are so high. So why is our gas going to South America? Why are components in our gas going to South America? We just know they're loading up at the refineries with refined products. We don't know how much or exactly what's on those ships, but we really need to, and we need the governor, we need the attorney general to get a hold of the manifest to see how much of our fuel is going south and how it's affecting the supply.
In this case, literally going south.
Literally going south. There's apparently a crisis in Chile. There's a crisis in Mexico. But we haven't. The problem is this isn't crude oil. This is some kind of refined supply out of our refineries. We only have 11 refineries that make gasoline. We've been paying so much more than the rest of the nation ever since February when our refineries went down. Why are we taking anything out of these refineries? Because they make a special blend of fuel.
Exactly.
And they blend it a certain way. And if you take pieces of that fuel, or you take the fuel itself, and you dump it in South America, yes, we're going to get gas prices that are $1.20 higher than the rest of the nation.
Yeah. We've got some graphics, 4 of them to be precise, that describe visually what's going on here. This is the one from the California gasoline inventory levels. This is from the
Energy Commission. This is the state of California, the agency that keeps track of gas. And you'll see ever since August of last year, that blue level is normal inventories for history. This was presented at the end of June by the California Energy Commission. That red line is where we've been since August. So our inventories have been low ever since August. And what you'll see in December is it peaks into the blue normal zone, the inventories of gasoline, refined gasoline. And then we have the largest export month ever in the history of data being collected for 16 years. So all of our gas goes out, crude oil is low, and then you start to see the refineries breaking. And you see when the refineries break in February, we're in that red zone where inventories are really, really low. And the refineries eventually come back online a little bit. But in May and June, when we get back to that blue zone, we're back in the normal zone. What happens? The oil refiners start to have a bunch of imports coming in because we can bring this in if we have 3 weeks' notice. And in order to keep the gas prices artificially high, we caught the oil refiners using their leverage over branded stations. These are the companies. They're charging 30 cents more than what they charge to the unbranded stations.
There's the graphic. So
that's right.
You got the path on the left of unbranded gasoline versus branded gasoline on the right.
Right.
So explain to us what's going on there.
Well, since this market's getting all this fuel, usually there's a 3 cents difference between what a refiner will charge a branded station, usually 3 cents more for marketing or some other delivery mechanism, and what they charge to an independent or unbranded station. It's usually 3 or 4 cents. However, when there was all this fuel in the market in May and June, in order to keep the prices higher at the pump, they used their contractual leverage to pump the price up at the branded stations 30 cents over what the unbranded or branded price is, and that comes back to the consumer.
And there it is. You're looking at anywhere from, about 24 cents to as much as 32 cents more that a branded station has to pay.
The branded station pays that much more, and because 85% of the stations are branded, or company run, that price is what dominates in the market. And of course, the independents don't undercut those stations by 30 cents. They undercut them by 8 to get the business. That way the market stays artificially high in price, even though we have plenty of fuel to actually lower the price.
So is there any justification for the higher price, significantly higher price that the branded stations pay? It's still the same gasoline.
No, and in the 15 years that these spreads have been going on, we've only found 2 other times that there has been that 30-cent spread, and it's only lasted for less than a week. This time we caught them over a 6-week period, charging between 25 and 35, 36 cents more. And we've given this information to the California Attorney General, and honestly, it's the first time since this Attorney General has been Attorney General that we got a call back from their office saying, hey, you've piqued our interest, we're investigating.
So she's receptive.
She's receptive, and one of the reasons is when she approved the consolidation, that's part of the problem of Tesoro and BP. Tesoro bought BP's refineries and the ARCO gas stations in 2013. She said, you've got to continue to make sure the ARCO brand is a low-price brand, and yet we have Tesoro charging ARCO stations 30 cents more than it's charging the independents. So we actually think Tesoro may have violated the agreement with the Attorney General. By the way, there are 4 oil refiners now that control 78% of the market, which is why we don't have much competition.
Is there any prosecutable offense?
I believe this price fixing right here is a prosecutable offense under the Robinson-Patman Act. It's not something that, as a consumer group, because it wouldn't necessarily be a class action, we could really afford to do, but it's something the Attorney General should do. She should enforce that agreement, and she also should look at this unbranded, branded spread, because it's not fair to the dealers and it's not fair to the consumers. We calculated between February and June, when these price spikes were the biggest because of the refinery outages, Californians paid $4.5 billion more for their gas than the U.S. average consumer. That's a stunning amount. That's $180 for every Californian.
And I want to make sure that we are clear on this. ARCO, which at least in my experience tends to be the lowest of the prices.
Has been.
But that's considered to be a branded or an unbranded?
It's a branded station for Tesoro, because it used to be branded by BP, and Tesoro bought BP and had the obligation to treat it like a branded station and continue to give it that low-cost leader status, which is not what happened during the months of May and June.
And even though the unbranded retailers are paying significantly less, they're jacking up the price.
Well, they're only 15% of the market, but if your competition is 30 cents higher, you can charge 8 cents less, keep a little bit more money, and then help. So that's what happened to the fuel in May and June. Now in July, after we outed the folks at the California Energy Commission, the Attorney General, they stopped that tactic. They also stopped all imports, literally all imports in the state ground to a halt, and that's when, on July 1, July 2, right going into July 4th weekend, we saw this huge price spike in LA above $4. That's when they stopped the imports, and they sent the ships down to Chile, South America, that we're charting now. And because our refineries are only starting to really recover, and when the imports stopped, and when the exports made the inventories drop even lower the last couple of weeks, that's when we're seeing $4.33 mid-city LA.
Okay, Jamie, take your foot off the gas pedal.